Hello, everyone. This is Eric Toensmeier and Jonathan Bates. We we used to garden together for about 17 years. We wrote the book Paradise Lot together. Um, and after all those years of gardening, we each moved off urban gardening. We each moved off to our own farms. And we've been asked by one of a couple of my students recently to reflect on what are the plants we grew at Paradise Lot that we would not grow again and why. So we put together just a couple of those. We don't always agree on all of them, but just to talk through what we wouldn't plant if we had it all to do over again, which we sort of do right now. So even though we're still in early stages on both of our farms and stuff. So I'm gonna share my screen and you can see here, and oops, let me zip all the way back. You can see here, and we'll jump back to the end in more detail. Jonathan, where can people find you?
Hey, Eric, this is great. Thanks for putting this together. Yeah, I am in Ithaca, New York, just outside in Brooktondale, New York, and we have a 10-acre farm. And some of these plants are starting to migrate from my various nurseries and projects as we plant and build our new gardens and farm systems. And I'll just mention one of our biggest challenges is deer pressure. And so until we get some better fencing and also irrigation in place, I haven't done a lot, but I've been thinking about many of these plants since leaving Massachusetts. But this is a fantastic way to be with Eric and think some more about these awesome plants.
And I'm Eric, and I live in Southampton, Mass. We have a new 5-acre farm here. We're just a couple years in. And we'll talk more about where you can find us and our various upcoming events and whatnot at the end there. So what didn't we bring to our new places and why, or what wouldn't we bring, or what would we not recommend other people plant? Somewhere in the mix of all that is what we're gonna cover. So do you want to talk about bamboos, Jonathan? Rhizome barriers and bamboos and stuff?
Well, when you first presented this awesome idea to me and I saw the bamboo, I said, well, I want to keep this on the good list. But after further thinking, I was mentioning to you, there's a small farm just down the road, like a mile from me. And in the wintertime, if you look back in their back field where there's a pond, you can actually see yellow groove bamboo is taken up probably an acre, half acre to an acre of their landscape. And they probably only have about 5 or 8 acres there. And so this is zone 5B6, climate zone, climate growing zone, USDA. The only reason I'd ever consider planting it again, we're on 10 acres. If I can find a spot, would be to trial it as some people are looking at it as an opportunity for winter livestock forage because the green leaves can be above the snow and they'll eat it above the snow. But that patch down the road's probably 20 years old or something. And I don't know if I want to have an acre of yellow groove bamboo here. It just seems like a little much to me, but it's an awesome plant otherwise.
That's sort of my feeling too. I will eventually make some space here for the native one around an area, but we put a big trench in around this before we planted it. We put a heavy duty, landfill liner plastic around it. It still managed to escape, and it was a real pain in the butt to stay on top of all the time, even though incredibly useful plant, which we used all the time for all kinds of garden projects. I will be very thoughtful and careful before I plant it anywhere. So.
And once it's established, the rhizomes are definitely the shoots are definitely edible. So
They're good. The
they're
people who are
totally
living there now
100%.
really like them. It's great.
Yep.
he really liked him too, but just maybe a little to be thought about with caution. It's a long-term investment. Shapova, how about that, JB?
I like pears and apples. I just think for us, it there's a couple of for our space. There was a couple of things that either didn't trees like this that either didn't taste good or didn't had too many pests and diseases or took up too much space. And this one to me, just there's other pear and apple, um, family plants that we could fit in this niche that just to me just not worth it.
I'd had a really delicious one in California, and we got one and planted it, and it fruited for a few years, and it was always like really just mealy and flavorless and gross. So I don't think it does that well out here. Was my sense. Very sad. Sad to say. Edible leaf goji. So we had two different clones. There's one that kind of stays put and one that runs everywhere, suckers underground and layers where it touches. So um I think we both decided we weren't going to grow the aggressive one ever again. Right? I really
Yeah,
like the vegetable, but
I have a edible leaf seedling that you gave me that is just fine. It's just staying where we put it and not moving around so much.
those are from seed we got from JL Hudson Seed Company. Whereas the other one, I think we had dug up on the side of the road, and it would like climb under the wall of the greenhouse and inside the greenhouse, and it was just pretty. It was a little much. It was a little much. Oh, Chinese yam. I will say I love Chinese yam. I love the big tubers underground. I love the aerial tubers, but it can be quite a weed. And we had kind of planted it in like 3 or 4 different places, each of which then had like their own rain of little aerial tubers falling to the ground and sprouting and making kind of a mess of it. Do you want to talk about it in New York State?
Yeah, so I think this plant is great and it has its place. I can't sell it. I have a food forest farm. I still do part of what I do is my in my business. I have a nursery, and I had this listed in Massachusetts that I would sell the little tuberlets, the aerial tubers. But in New York, it's listed as invasive, and so I can't do that. And it's definitely has its place. I think in our on our farm, if we had it in an area that where we could mow around it and have a little bit more better management, it's totally a great crop for sure.
I think 4 out of these like 12 plants are vines. It's just something about vines too. This one we had thought we'd heard there was an edible that you could eat the fruit of this. We were on the quest for the perennial squash that would survive our winters. And this one's supposed to be edible. So bitter, like inedibly bitter. Apparently there are edible types, and I think Oikos Tree Crops is offering those now. But
And is Oikos selling it as an edible seed or the actual the fruit?
I think for the fruit.
Wow,
But like so hard to eradicate, right? It has this huge tuber underground. We can never get rid of the thing. Really pretty flowers, beautiful nighttime flowers and
beautiful.
stuff, but it's hard to kill. Oh, you know what? Can we talk about Akebia for a minute? We forgot to put it
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Would you ever grow Akebia again?
No,
No.
no, that doesn't produce enough fruit mass or usable, interesting fruit mass for me. And then in relationship to the very opportunistic sprouts that come up everywhere, it's just not worth it.
That's that blue fruited Akebia quinata, which yeah, the fruit is kind of like bland. And then the shoots are supposed to be edible, but were very bitter, and the skin was very bitter. And even 10 years after we decided to get rid of it, it's still there. It's like never going to be gone. Just a very persistent weed. Anything else on snake gourd, perennial snake gourd? It is really pretty. but it like climbs a whip into the trees and pulls them down. It was like quite a,
Yeah, it was like covering our favorite pawpaw tree at one point.
yeah, yeah, it's not okay. So, ooh, cucumber berry. What do you got on that, Jonathan?
It's totally a lovely little plant, in lots of ways. I think I wouldn't have it here just because I think my pasture wouldn't do well with it. I just, I have a pretty intense pasture situation. Uh, if you had a like a boutique vegetable business and you wanted to pickle them or something, they'd be a very interesting plant to have. But it does run in certain places. It will run all over the place.
It's native to the east. It has edible little cucumbers, which are really cute. It's shade tolerant. Those are all good things. It was perennial for us sometimes, but it would, if the fruit got too ripe, it makes people barf, which is not great. And I just found like after a couple years, I might eat like one or two a year. I was more like giving it to other people to eat as like a novelty, and I'm not really interested in novelty food. So much for that. Oh, Vlad the Impaler supposedly had edible fruit, although we only had a male, so we never got fruit, maybe, thankfully. Has edible shoots, but they're pretty fuzzy. Hummingbirds loved it, but God, it was such a weed, right? Like suckered underground. It's still there. It's still there 20 years or whatever later. It's still going.
It had these big tubers like a groundnut, but they were bitter and disgusting. And no, I definitely wouldn't plant that.
Yeah,
No thanks.
too much, way too much. Wild chervil. So we grew this because it's good for beneficial insects. It's fine eating. It's very pretty. It looks beautiful in a salad. But the wild green form is like a mega weed out where you are, right?
Yep. Yeah, it was definitely worth having in a small. It seems to me this is a little bit more maybe because of the red foliage, the photosynthetic. It's not. It doesn't seem as vigorous as the green one, but I don't know. It would probably convert to the green one at some point if you had it. I think in a smaller garden situation, it's fine. But in my situation in a pasture situation, I don't. We already have also have wild parsnip, the yellow flowering wild parsnip, which gives me sun rashes because I'm allergic to this family. Um, and then it's all along the roadside and it's everywhere, the parsnip. And then in some, not in this town, but in two, three towns over, it's all, this is the green form of this is all along the road. And it's just not worth, you know, I don't know. Just seems the disturbance that has with the because then it moves into the landscape right from the roadside. It gets pushed along as they mow the sides, and then it gets pushed into people's fields. And then once it's in the fields, it's just like the wild parsnip. It's hard to manage at that point, especially for someone like me who gets burns from it.
That reminds
So
me, would you talk about cow parsnip? That is another one that I know you would not grow. I will put it here somewhere very carefully, but talk about cow parsnip, Heracleum giganteum, or no, Heracleum, yeah, giganteum, the native cow parsnip anyway, yeah.
it's
Why wouldn't
beautiful.
you
I
grow
love
that
it.
again,
But
Jonathan? Yeah.
I'm actually trying to eradicate Queen Anne's lace from my system, my not my system, but my pasture because I can't weed whack it. It gives that you cut it up and it just sprays on me and it gives me burns everywhere. I can't have that here.
And the first one that ever did that to you was cow parsnip,
That's right.
which is a beautiful plant, gorgeous, gorgeous plant, great for beneficial insects, has a lot of edible parts, and causes horrible burns when the sap gets on you in the sun. Just doesn't seem good. Doesn't seem good. For people who are sensitive to it and stuff. Yeah. Heartleaf aster. So this is one of the few useful plants that was on the in the garden when we got there. Um, And what I remember is every year we tried to weed out about 90% of them because it was so weedy that it was just coming up everywhere. The seedlings were coming up everywhere, and the perennials were coming back everywhere. It was just like, for a plant that attracts beneficial insects and doesn't do much else, it seemed like an awful lot of room it was taking up. It did grow really well under Norway maple, which I do appreciate, and it is native but grows in the city. That's really cool. It was really more it became a management issue to me. So what about for you?
I think it's actually already in the field here. And I'd rather have this than some of the other plants that are in there that are taking up space. But yeah, a lot of the asters are a challenge. But I have to when I run the animals through. Um, they're probably not eating aster so much, but I have to mow to keep some other goldenrods and things at bay. And so, the asters don't really get a foothold so much. But yeah, it's a great benefit. It probably tracks similar amount of insects as the umbels do or the Apiaceae, but it doesn't burn. So, you know, that
That's a
says
big
something.
plus. And later in the season, which is nice too. Yeah, it's very pretty
Yeah.
also. Just I vowed, I vowed never again. Good King Henry. Talk to me, Jonathan.
I do not know how people say that they like it as a asparagus. It's just too bitter. It's beautiful, it has its place, but it's not worth it here. I'd rather go rhubarb or something or asparagus.
I think the only time we ever planted it and liked it was when we mixed it in with a lot of other greens, so you couldn't really taste it. Maybe we did, I've heard people say if you give it a lot of manure, it gets more tender and it gets better flavor, whatever. We never did that. But there's like so many other greens that just taste good in the first place. Why this? I don't know. Never did it for me. Turkish rocket. How about
I'd
you?
pick Turkish Rocket over Good King Henry if I was to choose,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
but
Because it does
uh,
taste
I
good.
I think if this gets established and then it becomes weedy, um, I don't know if it's worth bringing that around. But I've tried. I've tried to get it established in the field. I just have too many things in the field that right now are way more take the niche way more quickly than this does. But what do you think about it, Eric?
Well, I found I ate it less and less every year. I don't
Yeah.
love woolly vegetables very much, and it's kind of furry. I love sea kale broccoli, which is kind of the fruits at the same time or whatever is ripe at the same time and tastes way better. So if I had to pick one, I'll go with the sea kale. And this one is it's really hard to eradicate. And if you leave a little piece of it in the ground, it'll come back. It's kind of like if comfrey tasted like broccoli rabe. Um, so the flowers are very pretty and stuff too. It just to me the management is more trouble than the food is worth. There's other foods I can grow. Um, Houttuynia. This one,
No way.
we bought this variegated one called Chameleon, which was very pretty and it tastes like gingery fish, which is cool. And it was reasonably easy to control when it was the multicolored version. But then part of it reverted to the wild green form and it just went like totally out of control on us. Um,
It's great with certain dishes like a pork, like a kind of, you know, um Asian style pork meatball or something. It was really good that way.
yeah, yeah.
Um if there was a way you could put it in a barrier and like a giant planter or something where you could get enough of it when you needed it, but I don't know if I would trust it even in a big planter. I think it would just a mint or something, it would grow down underneath and come out the bottom or something like that, you
Yeah, I
know?
feel like that's what I'm gonna stay with. I will say the people who are there now enjoy it very much. I am not gonna plant it here. Let's see, do we have, I think,
Oh,
oh, yeah, yeah.
and one thing with the Houttuynia that was very interesting is that, and for some, I think I had seen this before it happened at our house, at someone else's house, where they had had it for many years. It started migrating under things like other bushes and shrubs and trees in full shade. And so if you think you can grow it as a ground cover around things, and it wouldn't compete with other things, and because of shade issues, the shade doesn't knock it out.
It'll grow in a pond, it'll grow in the dry ground next to your driveway, it'll grow in the sun, it'll grow in the shade. It was just a little, I've seen it on little islands and rest, like parking lot islands and rest stops on the highway in New Jersey, doing really well. Like this, maybe a little more successful. It's very nutritious. It's very good for you. Just you have to really want to eat a lot of it to plant it. I think you better
It
have a lot.
reminds me like a dwarf Japanese knotweed or something.
Yeah, yeah. Then this one, another native plant that is a horrible weed, right? We at first were like, oh, look at these violets. Let's bring the some from this parking lot and bring it to our new garden and use it to fill in space because we didn't have a lot of stuff to fill in space in the early years. So we planted a lot of it. And then one day we were just like, whoa, oh no. Has a very dense root system that just like competes really hard with everything. It's really hard to eradicate. It's not
It
the leaf don't taste that
it
good.
started to kill our sea kale at one point
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we planted it there on purpose,
We put it there on purpose.
thinking that it could be the understory of the sea kale, and then
And then it grew like 12 inches high. It was like tripled in height somehow. It was totally bad. That was bad. Yeah. Not one I would ever plant again in most circumstances anyway. Um, well, I will grow other violets. So okay, yeah, you want to say where can people find you and what do you have coming up next?
thanks. Yeah, we are excited to kind of be in this place of experimentation. We've been here. This is our third summer. Um, and one of our things we're trying out is last year I did some farm walks the fourth Sunday of every month from spring through into winter, through December. And so we're doing it again this year. And so if you're in the Ithaca, New York area, the fourth Sunday of the month, come check us out. We just do a 1 hour walk around, talking about the farm, and actually we have a lot of wildlife that we like to share, and so animals, plants, wildlife, um, and just to enjoy the space.
And you have nursery sales and stuff sometimes too.
Yes,
Yeah, consulting services.
I do have consulting services
Yes,
as
all of those.
well.
Great, great,
Yeah, yeah. If you want to learn more about us, check out foodforestfarm.com.
great. And I'm at perennialsolutions.org. We have an events calendar up. We're doing a bunch of in-person workshops on our new farm. The next one, same time as Jonathan, so we're on the same weekend, but we're 4 hours apart. We have an advanced settable forest gardens June 21st to 23rd, and then some other things coming up through the rest of the year. And you can always buy the book that Jonathan and I wrote, Paradise Lot 2 Plant Geeks, a tenth of an acre, and something, making of an edible paradise or something. Well, all right.